All right, welcome to part one of my review criticism of The Price of Pleasure, a documentary, an anti-pornography documentary film by Ching Sun, Miguel Picker, and Robert Wosnitzer. This is really going to be first an introduction to this. I'm not sure how many parts I'm going to make the series. We'll see how it goes. I found an exceptionally well-written blog by Ernest Green, who's actually featured in the film. He's one of the pornographers featured in the documentary, and he wrote a pretty scathing criticism of it. And while some of the things I was going to talk about, he also talks about, and he does a much better job than I ever could. So I'm going to try to avoid those things, and I'll link to his blog. Where I do talk about some things from it, I will, if I forget to credit, and you know whatever. Okay, I'm giving him credit for those things now, and I will attempt to specifically credit where we overlap. Although some of the things, since I thought of it and I was very proud of my thinking of it, I'm gonna claim it as my own still because it's mine. If that makes sense. Some of the impressions, but I'm gonna go for more of a general thing about some of the stuff about it, and let him, because he deals with. Like, he was there when some of the stuff went to the cutting room floor. Like, he saw some of the interviews, and he knows he claims at least, what was said that didn't make it in the film that significantly changes the meaning. And I can't speak to the veracity of those kinds of details or not. So, anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on about that now. But one of the things about this that because whenever I fully believe that if you have an opinion on any topic, to claim an opinion, you really do have to know both sides of the issue. There's a great quote about that. I don't recall it, but nonetheless. No, but there's you have to know. If I'm going to be pro-pornography, I need to know what the anti-pornography groups are saying, both as research material, but also to see what they're, are they complete nut jobs? Do they make some sense, and I disagree with some points they make? Do I agree with most of the points they make, but disagree on one small issue? To know that, and I need to look at their material. And so I'm going to be perfectly honest. Despite Variablast's recommendation that I'm somehow an expert on this, I'm truly not an expert on this. My expertise is in crustacean phylogeny and evolution of reproductive biology. There's a little bit of an overlap in sexuality with that, but anyway. But nonetheless, I do have access to certain things, and I'm going to get into that. But I'm not an expert on it. But it's especially this, the anti-pornography side of things. I am slowly but surely working my way through the great body of material that exists on it. And one of the things that I'm finding is that the range is extreme. Meaning that within that group, and I'm looking at feminist anti-pornography, by the way. I'm not going into the religious anti-pornography, okay? Although there's overlap there too. I'm talking about just the pure, I call it, and I'm not saying that the people are atheists necessarily, but their viewpoints don't mention religion, so their viewpoints are atheistic. Arguments against pornography. And I'm finding viewpoints on there where they embrace and love pornography of all forms and erotica, except for simulated rape pornography or whatever, those kinds of things. Two groups that, side boob shown in a commercial should be banned. I mean, I'm finding that continuum, okay, if that makes sense. I'm finding everything in between. Different people with different acceptance levels, which you would actually is a good sign, because what that shows me, like with anything, is that because it's not really an organization. I'm not calling them an organization because it's not like they're all unified together and all like planning their strategies together. But as a body of a viewpoint, a group of people with more or less common viewpoint that do occasionally come together and exchange ideas. It's healthy within a group like that to find disparity of opinions. When they all have one opinion, it's time to it's time to run. When you have a group where they're here's what we believe, and if you believe even slightly otherwise, you're no longer part of our group. That group, that's unhealthy in my opinion. So okay, now sorry, getting off topic again. This introduction could take 2 videos. So I'm talking about the price of pleasure. But one of the things that I have found on several different blogs not criticizing it. I have read. The reality is there's very few critiques of that out that I've been able to find. I've mostly found, like the Ernest Green blog criticizing it, but the majority of things out there are supporting it. Lots and lots and lots of feminist and actually Christian. I mean, it's gotten support on some of the Christian anti-pornography blogs as well. It's promoted as an important film, something you have to see, something that's whatever. And I would completely agree that it's an important film. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but it's important. And but the thing is, and I'm going to use my time up with this. One point. One of the things that I run across with it is that it is sort of front page promoted as, watch this movie. You have to see this movie. Do you use pornography? Watch The Price of Pleasure. So it's sort of put up there as like the here's what we've been waiting for all of these years. Here is the film that succinctly summarizes all of these arguments and brilliantly exposes the horrors and whatever of it's kind of being indirectly or directly promoted as this. But now here's where this kind of falls apart a little bit. When I've seen on some of the same places now, where then there's like a comment is made or somebody criticizes the film. The argument is that it's it's a biased source. Of course, it's a biased source. We never said it wasn't biased. Of course, it's in other words, it's protected from academic scrutiny because it never claimed to be an academic film. It's a biased source. And I think that's having your cake and eating it too, if that makes sense. And the argument I want to make is this is a comparison. I'm going to make this 2 parts. I apologize, guys. Bear with me. Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. Okay? I happen to support man-made climate change. So if I am arguing that, and I'm saying you don't believe in man-made climate change, watch this movie. Watch this film. This will change your mind. This will change how you look at the world. And somebody on the other side looks at that and says, well, I found a flaw with it because, first of all, it cites this person and, whatever, their degrees in journalism, not in, whatever. And I counter with, well, it's a biased film. Of course it's a biased film. It's a documentary. It's not meant to be scientific. You see what I'm saying? What I've done is I've done 2 different opposite things with that film. I'm promoting it as evidence, and then when it's criticized as evidence, I'm saying, well, no, it's not evidence. Of course it's not evidence. It's biased. It's meant to be biased. It's merely somebody's opinion, acknowledging that the actual evidence is also out there. And I think I've seen this being done, and I think that it's pretty important for it to recognize when that's being done. Okay, if it's evidence, then it's subject to scrutiny. If it's an opinion, it's still subject to scrutiny, but obviously, you're acknowledging that it may or may not be entirely truthful, or it may not. It's not presenting the whole argument. And a documentary can be truthful in presenting both sides of an argument. And there's nothing, and I'm not at all. There's nothing wrong with producing a biased documentary. There's nothing wrong with An Inconvenient Truth. There's nothing wrong with The Price of Pleasure. They are what they are. They don't claim to be otherwise. So I'm not criticizing those. I'm talking about whether, using them as evidence for, they come off, they're both propaganda films, whether or not you agree with the concept that they're propagandizing, if that makes sense. I support climate change, but I also see an inconvenient truth is shameless propaganda. Okay, doesn't mean that it is all entirely incorrect, but it also means that there's big flaws in it as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop this right here. I'll make a part 2 of this introduction.